Hello, everyone. This is Brittany Button, and I'm a long-term care insurance specialist at Art Jetter and Company. I want to thank you for joining us today on this highly anticipated presentation from Lincoln Financial Group. Now, we know there's a need for long-term care preparation and retirement planning. So today, we'll be reviewing research about what advisor and clients are thinking when it comes to long-term care, the growing need for planning, and how to frame that conversation. We're joined by Rob Johnson, Regional Sales Manager for Lincoln Financial Group. But before I turn it over to Rob, I just want to mention that if you have any questions throughout the presentation, you may type them into the chat box on your screen. All questions will be answered at the end of the presentation. You'll also notice we've attached 2 handouts that are available for you to download that's going to coincide with this presentation. So without further delay, I'm turning it over to you, Rob.
Hey, thank you, Brittany. I appreciate it. And thank you to everyone who's taken time out of their busy schedule to join us this morning. This is going to be a departure from most carrier webinars that you've probably listened to in the past. There will be no product talk on this call. This is solely for the purpose of helping you with those conversations with your clients and having that conversation. So to jump right in, we're going to have 4 parts here today. The first part, we're going to be talking about what advisors and clients are thinking and how do we know this. We know this from the last 30 years. In fact, next week, we will be celebrating 30 years of Lincoln MoneyGuard. So we have a good history of paying claims as far as offering LTC solutions. We also, just last August and September, commissioned a third-party firm, Versta Research, to conduct a survey of 1,000 U.S. adults and 500 financial producers. And we've, Versta Research compiled all of that information, and we've put this in this presentation to help you with those conversations. So what advisors are thinking, the growing need for long-term care planning. We're going to talk about framing the long-term care discussion, and finally, incorporating it into your practice. Let's jump right in. What clients are thinking. When we look at what clients are thinking, only 14% have talked to an advisor about how they would pay for long-term care. And only 13% have talked with an advisor about who would provide that care. So certainly, you know, your clients have not been having these conversations for the most part. And advisors, you are the go-to resource for all long-term care planning. 9 in 10 Americans believe that financial advisors should be discussing long-term care plans with their clients. And why clients need long-term care. So let's look at long-term care planning gives clients a peace of mind. 98% of those U.S. adults that were surveyed would feel more confident about their financial future if they had that discussion with their advisor, and 96% would have more peace of mind. So your clients are wanting to have this discussion. They would feel better. They would feel more confident about their future. They would have more peace. Who should plan? Everyone needs a plan. Whether it's self-insuring or it's putting a plan in place, nearly all advisors agree that long-term care planning is in their client's best interest. And I get this question all the time, when the plan. Rule of thumb is age 50. Certainly we see clients younger than that. At Lincoln, we'll go down to age 40. There are carriers that will go a little bit younger. But typically we're seeing people starting around age 50, and that's for a couple of reasons. One, you're going to see the prices of plans be lower, and almost more importantly, you're going to find people that are healthier and that could qualify for a long-term care plan. And how to plan, clients are relying on you for that advice. Okay. What topics are you guys talking about with your clients? Well, 59% were talking to their clients about saving for retirement, 42% asset allocation, and then 27% estate planning, retirement income planning was 57%, tax planning 32%, and why we're here today, long-term care planning was only 26% of the topics that advisors were discussing with their clients. So clients see value in including long-term care in their financial planning. If we look at this, you'll see what only 7% saw it not at all valuable, 15% saw it not too valuable. But what we're going to see here is 78% of those 1,000 U.S. adults felt it would be valuable to have this conversation. Why is this overlooked? Often, we'll get pushback. Maybe it's thinking about long-term care or extended care in the future. Either the topic is too depressing, it's a low priority versus our other plans that we're looking at, and not sure why my clients may need or want it. But more often than not, I hear it's outside the scope of what I do, it's too difficult, and it may be too time consuming and I don't have any time for it. But here's the real risk. Here's, when clients are thinking about, it won't happen to me. 33% think that they will need care. 40% believe that their spouse will. 50% assume their parent will. But the reality is the actual risk is much higher. Now, when we think about this, another misconception is that Medicare or Medicaid will have me covered. Medicare is only going to cover a portion of skilled nursing costs up to 100 days. And Medicaid is only going to be available to those with limited assets or income. The other objection is that's what my savings are for. The reality is the national average for a private nursing home is over $102,000 per year. Financial professionals estimate their clients face an unplanned care event may spend their savings 2 to 3 times faster than planned. And this is the last one that I think is often the most overlooked. My family will be able to take care of me. We found through that survey that women caring for ill parents are twice as likely as non-caregivers to experience depression or anxiety. And the overall cost of a female caregiver is estimated at almost $325,000 because of lost wages and diminished work hours. So we talk about the growing need. The last years of retirement are the riskiest. If we think about the average annual withdrawal rate of someone's retirement portfolio, it's typically around 5%. Those with a long-term care event, that withdrawal rate averages around 13% per year. And what the costs are often underestimated. Average annual cost of a private nursing home room, most people perceive it as about $75,000 a year. We know from that previous slide that roughly only 75% of the average annual cost of a private nursing home room. Since we know it's right around $102,000 a year, obviously it's going to be higher and lower, and I'll show you a resource later in this presentation for you to look up specifically what the costs are in your area. So long-term care doesn't always affect just that individual, and this is what we have to stress. Long-term care impacts families. 60% of advisors say they often see families devastated by the cost of long-term care. And I've seen in the past, a lot of people put a plan in place so rather than supervising or rather than being that caregiver, they can supervise that care instead. And that's important. Most clients want to avoid being a burden on their children, running out of money or becoming a burden. It's more often than not, and it's the reason my parents bought a plan, is they didn't want to burden me or my family or my brother if they were to have a long-term care event down the road. So what are the perceived burdens versus what's the reality? So the burdens of caregiving are often that emotional burden that physical burden, that time burden. This is how it's perceived. And then there's the financial burden, health consequences, stress, and lost earnings. Well, the reality from that survey was that the actual burden based on caregiver perceptions was 84% found that the emotional burden was the toughest. 62% the physical burden, 72% the time. And then drop down to 40% for the financial, health consequences, stress, and lost earnings. You could see that emotional, physical, and time were the biggest burdens for caregivers. And it was less the financial burden, the health consequences, or the lost earnings. Let's talk about framing this conversation to open up planning conversation. So first of all, what we need to do is initiate that long-term care conversation. It's always better to start this process earlier than retirement. So we talked about that rule of age 50. If you're starting it at 50, 55, 60, certainly better than starting it at 65 or 67. Make long-term care an aspect of all the retirement planning you do. Make sure it's just something you're bringing up on your annual reviews, on your semi-annual reviews. We need to have a discussion about this. And encourage your clients to start talking about it at home. Make sure that they're having a conversation with their kids, with their siblings, with their parents. We want to have that dialogue started as we start thinking about growing older and needing extended care. So let's talk about how we're going to frame that conversation. When we're sitting down with clients, and I've had these conversations myself, how are you going to pay for long-term care? And that's often what they'll rely on you for as their advisor. But we want to start thinking about that conversation. How are you going to pay for long-term care? Where do you want to receive care? Do you want to receive care? Do you want to go to the receive care at home, which is where about 50% of all long-term care is received, is at home. About 25% assisted living and about 25% nursing home. So let's have that conversation. Where do you want to receive that care? Whether it's a continuing care facility down the road, maybe it's at assisted living. Rarely is it someone electing to go into the nursing home on the other side of town. But we want to start thinking about, where do we want to receive that care? What are your care preferences? Again, kind of going along with that last one, would you prefer to stay at home as long as possible? Would you rather get into assisted living? Would you rather be in one of those continuing care where you start out in an apartment and move to assisted living and eventually move to a nursing home? We want to know, what are their preferences going forward? Again, this is just getting the wheels turning, thinking about that conversation. And what are your plans for your assets? So here specifically, besides those questions, we want to ask your clients, do they know the cost of care in their area? And again, I'll show you the resource for them, for you to have on hand when you ask them. And maybe they plan on retiring in Arizona or in Florida. That tool is going to allow, if they say, hey, we're planning to move to Sarasota, you'll have the cost of care in that area. If they would rather self-insure, which assets would they sell first? What are they going to use first? If they had an extended care event, what asset are we going to use first? And if they should need care, what is their family prepared to do? We want to start having that conversation. Is their family local? Do they have the ability to leave work? What is their family? Maybe it's their spouse. Maybe their spouse is unable to help take care of them. We want to start talking about those things now. Will their loved ones be able to help pay for care or be able to provide that care? You know, if it's their son or daughter, or it's their, brother or sister, will they have loved ones that will be able to help provide care should they need it? And are their family members aware of their expectations? And this is really important. When we're talking about setting up a long-term care plan, whether it's a standalone long-term care, a hybrid long-term care plan, it's important that along with having these other conversations, that if you put a plan in place, that you communicate that to the family members. And maybe you've decided to not move forward with putting a plan in place. And that plan, if you're not putting a plan in place, is self-insuring. I mean, that's your plan. But it's important that the family members are aware of their expectations. So all of these, it's an easy conversation to have. Do they know the cost of care in the area? If they would rather self-insure, which assets would they sell? If they should need care, what is the family prepared to do? Will their loved ones help pay for care? And are their family members aware of their their expectations? So here's the link I was talking about. It's really easy. This is a cost of care map. It's called whatcarecosts.com/Lincoln. In the upper right-hand corner, it's going to ask for a sponsor code. You can just use Lincoln right there. You'll be able to see the cost for nursing home, assisted living, home care across the country. It's also important with their thoughts about caregiving, encourage them to discuss it with their loved ones. We just talked about that in the previous slide. And health-related financial decisions, who will have access to the authority to take charge, make sure their family members are aware of this. And as most of you are already doing, make sure the client should have a living will, a current will, a durable power of attorney, and a power of attorney for health care. All of those things should be in place. So how do we implement this into your practice? Even though 1 in 5 advisors say their clients have a sufficient assets to self-insure, 89% agree that their clients would benefit from the financial leverage achieved with a long-term care solution, like a hybrid long-term care solution from the different carriers out there. It's also important, if you're able to talk about personal experiences. Clients become more interested in planning when they have a personal experience. The study found that 75% having someone close to them who has needed care. 59% report seeing someone close to them becoming a caregiver. Again, talk about that. Talk about what that experience was like. What was it like for them to leave their work to provide care for their family member? And 50% have actually become a caregiver. So your clients have experienced this, whether they've seen someone who needed care, whether they've had someone close to them be a caregiver, or they're actually been a caregiver. Other triggers that prompt the conversation, more often than not, typically 49% has started this conversation upon reaching a certain age. And more often than not, it's 65, 67, somewhere in there. 30% started this conversation from advice from a family or friends. 29% reaching a certain income level to afford it. Only 25% had started this conversation upon advice from their advisors. 15% moving to retirement, and 11% had experienced or been offered LTC as an employee benefit.
And so Rob, I'd like to jump. Oh.
Yeah, go ahead.
Rob, I'd like to jump in there. I'd almost be curious what the percentage is of clients who have visited their doctor and are running to their financial advisor to talk about long-term care. Essentially, we're finding that's where it's very important to do the underwriting pre-screens because the doctor didn't have good news. So interesting that didn't show up in the study.
Right. Yeah, I would agree. I mean, we're getting people looking at long-term care planning who have already started experiencing health issues, and that it may or may not be too late to even put a solution in place for them because of their health. I appreciate it, Brittany. So when we talk about this, having this conversation with your clients, putting a plan in place can help enhance that client loyalty and retention. especially when you've put a plan in place and they've communicated to their family members are going to be appreciative that you've had that planning discussion with them. Because of that, that can open up multi-generational planning opportunities. If they see you've helped their parents or their family members with this type of planning, they may be more inclined to use you as their advisor. There are other opportunities, and Brittany can certainly assist you with this. Lincoln has marketing materials to focus this planning, whether it's on women, on single individuals, that LGBT market, family caregivers, and spouses with an age difference of 10 or more years. Certainly, those are all opportunities when we're talking about doing LTC planning. Now, we have resources for you. Brittany has attached a couple pieces to this webinar, but she has additional ones. We also have this. Brittany, was this one of the pieces you had?
No, this is not. Okay. I didn't give away everything, so.
Yeah, I'll make sure you get this piece. So we have this long-term care conversation workbook, and this talks about a lot of the things that we covered today. So you can give this to your clients before you meet with them. Maybe you're having an annual review. Send this to them a month ahead of time, just to say, I'd like to have a conversation about doing some extended care or long-term care planning. Or you could even use it during your next meeting. Lincoln has this piece available for you, and it has, again, a lot of the same slides and pieces that you're going to see during this presentation. Also, I just don't want to forget, Brittany has a copy of this whole presentation. So if you'd like to review it later or with other individuals in your office, Brittany has a copy of this PowerPoint. Again, all of this information was compiled from the Versta research firm that Lincoln commissioned last year, so the 1,000 adults and the 500 advisors. I want to open it up to questions. Brittany and I are both available to answer any questions that you have about incorporating long-term care planning into your conversations with your clients.
And so, Rob, we actually got a couple questions, and they're all along the same theme here, and it's regarding rate increases. So, yes, for those who have worked with long-term care insurance here over, years, we all know there's been rate increases, and some of them have been quite hefty. Now, from an industry perspective, I hope we've got that corrected, as we know where interest rates are, underwriting's got a little bit more stricter, and we're not offering some of those benefits that put a lot of risk onto the carriers. Now, since we're talking with Rob at Lincoln Financial Group, he actually has good news regarding that, as with their MoneyGuard plan and some others that are out there, these plans offer guaranteed premiums, which can be a huge selling point when talking to your clients.
Yeah, you're spot on. I mean, all the premiums, whether someone elects to pay it as a single premium or they elect to pay it over 10 years, or maybe with Lincoln you could do a 2-age 65 payment option, all of those premiums are guaranteed, and they're guaranteed to have a tax-free benefit of more than they paid in. So they're either going to get a long-term care benefit of more than they paid in. Typically, we're seeing that leverage be 4 or 5 times what they put in, or a death benefit of more than they paid in premium. So either way, it takes away a lot of those objections that we saw in the past, whether it's a use it or lose it, or is this rate guaranteed? Lincoln MoneyGuard satisfies both of those, handles both of those objections.
Exactly. And so some of you on the call are asking how to get more information on the hybrid or asset-based long-term care options. So following the call, the Jetter team is going to be sitting by the phone waiting to hear from you guys and gals out there. We can be reached at 800-228-0008. My extension is 1007. And that actually looks like it wraps up our questions for now, Rob. Was there anything else you'd like to add before we end the session?
No, I just appreciate everyone jumping on today. Again, we're celebrating 30 years at Lincoln this month for long-term care solutions, and we're grateful for your time, taking time out of your schedule today to join us. And please,
Yes, and
reach out to Brittany and her team.
well, and Rob, I want to say thank you for taking time out of your day to present for us, and of course, everyone who joined us also. And just remember, it's right around the corner, but we've got November coming up, which is Long-Term Care Insurance Awareness Month. So these tools are going to be key to having successful conversations. Again, I'm going to be standing by the phone after the call. Number I can be reached is 800-228-0008, extension 1007. I look forward to hearing from y'all, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you.